Everyone
okay, so hold on.
God. So
So
yeah,
let's
at the gate of Rome at that time, right? And so I mean, a great majority of people on this planet right now are serving the God of Abraham. I mean, the Christians, obviously, they go through some intermediaries, but at the end point, you know, it's the God of Abraham that they're reaching.
Right, but it doesn't really answer the question, why does he have to be at the gate of Rome at this point? He's coming to there not at the point when they're all serving God. He's there at the point when they destroyed Jerusalem. So, just carrying this thought further, why does Moshiach come from this relationship? So, one of the explanations is that Moshiach is a very powerful soul, a very strong soul. And in heaven, they don't let a soul like that come down so fast. It's too powerful. It'll change the whole world. It'll make a redemption. So they give it a hard time. So the only way they allow for such a neshama to come down is they say, you got to come down through a relationship that's not clean. And then maybe it'll affect you in some way, and you'll have a challenge. You have to balance. You're a very powerful soul, but you're coming from great-great-grandparents that did some horrible thing or whatever, something that's not the norm. And that's why Mashiach comes. That's the only way he's allowed to come down to this world, if he comes from this type of relationship. I once heard that someone explained it. There was a Hasidic Jew who was in prison in Siberia for many years because it was the communism put him in prison. He ended up going out of Siberia, coming out of Russia. He lived in Israel. He came to New York many times. I knew him. I saw him many times, and I heard him speak. It's a very strong, always a smile on his face, even though he went through hell, literally. Anyway, he says like this. He says, one time I was in prison, and I was with people, lowlifes. I was with people. He said he learned so many lessons from his imprisonment. Just the way people were acting. He learned lessons how to serve God better. So he says, what happens was, you weren't allowed to play cards in a particular place that he was in. But yet, the peasants around there, they found their way to play cards. He says like this. He said that suddenly a guy would come from the KGB or whoever they came to check out, and within a second, all these cards were not here. And these guys, these guards would come and they would check your pockets. They would take everything to see, where are these cards? They couldn't find it. And somehow they left, and 10 minutes later they were playing cards again. So Rav Mendel, his name was Rav Mendel Futterfass. Rav Mendel says, I finally got the answer, because I was friendly with some of these people, just to talk. They used to talk to me. I said, how do you do this? And the guy said, very simple. He says, we are very talented pickpocketers. So he said like this, as soon as these cards come, we gather the cards and we somehow put it in the guard's pocket. Right. So the guard is always, you never think about checking his own pocket. So he says, he goes checking everybody's pockets, and the guard doesn't find it, and somehow before they leave, we go close to the guard, and it's out of the pocket in the back of the guard. So Rav Mendel said, I understood from there that that's kind of where the story of Mashiach comes, because what happens is the only way they'll let Mashiach come down, the heavenly court, wherever, the angels, whoever, if he comes through their pockets, so to speak. He has to go, he comes from that type of relationship of Rus, who comes from Lot, who has a relationship with his daughter, and only then could Mashiach come out of there and be what he has to be. He has to kind of be in there. So similarly, in a similar vein, we're talking about Mashiach and Moshe. They got to kind of crack Egypt, but he has to come from Egypt to crack it. You got to use the same stick to break the tree. The axe comes from the same material of the tree.
So do people who are great tzaddiks and all, but they don't have to go through all of that. Maybe they do, but my point is, if you're born into a family of Orthodox Jews, and generationally, it's not that hard to be an Orthodox Jew. It's not so hard, because 5 generations have been Orthodox Jews. But if you come from a family where there's been incest, and there's been, God forbid, pork, or whatever, it's got to be, it makes you a stronger person. It makes more for a Mashiach type person to do the job. I mean, you know what I mean? Does the Mashiach have to go through an incestuous background to do the job? Why couldn't someone, I mean, why would God do that? It doesn't make sense.
The Zohar tells that, the negative force, Satan, is there trying to stop that kind of positiveness of Mashiach type or tzaddikim. So a lot of times the tzaddikim have to be born in with the least expected place where the negative force is going to look from in the negative, aspect.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, why wouldn't Mashiach come from generations, thousands of generations of tzaddiks? Why would you find somebody who has to? Why go through this?
Well, he's actually is coming. It doesn't say that he himself is coming from that relationship. I'm just going back to the very original source.
Okay, but there's a convert, there's incest, there's all the things that are negative to Judaism, right?
But you said yourself, I think you answered your own question. You said that sometimes you're stronger, right? You're stronger if you come from a foreign place, and you're acting strong is sometimes more valued than a person who was 5 generations coming righteous. It was easy. So Mashiach is not an easy road. Mashiach is a transformation type of road. Mashiach got to do a big job here to transform the world into a state of redemption, into dropping all of our nonsense and delving into a more godly type of living. So maybe he does need to have that background that's not clean and struggle to get, struggle to make his way righteous. And that's sometimes more powerful than, which not getting off the subject, that answers somewhat why this generation is more feasible to receive, or more fortunate to get the redemption, because it's a generation that has so much filth to deal with, and so much insensitivity, and so much corruption, and yet people are still committed to Hashem. That's more valuable than in a generation where everything was pure, and everything was light, everything was beautiful. So there is something to say about coming out of the darkness brings you more meritorious than if it was light all along.
Well, but if the last generation, believe me, was just as bad as this generation, and the generation, it's just where you're coming from. It was just as evil if you were looking for the evil. It was the second, the wars, the Holocaust. I understand that. But the
communication systems today can get into your house easily.
But that's a good thing.
It's very difficult to keep that negativity, that really dark negativity coming into your home.
But it's used also to affirm things. It's good to catch the bad guys. I mean, it's used.
But I know what you're saying. But on the other hand, also, in mind, for example, people will say, "Oh, I remember the old days. Person's word was a word. They shook hands. That's all you needed." Nowadays, all these shysters and everything.
They were all gangsters. Who said that was true?
Well, that's what I hear people say.
Next subject, yeah.
And what I'm saying, right? But I know, and all of these things were simpler. There was always murderers. There's always people thieves. It's always that. And even our generation is that.
Right.
But the previous generation, things were a little more simpler. People more. There was more idea of modesty. There was more idea of